Hi, everybody. We're finally live on Facebook this week. Cruel Justice, empowered by Witness to Innocence. Today, we're going to talk about Witness to Innocence a little bit and what we're involved in. Today, I have the chairman of the board with me, Miss Elizabeth Zitrin, and she has a lot of information about what we actually get involved in. So for those that don't know, that Witness to Innocence, we're an organization built of death row exonerees around the United States. But a lot of people don't know what's the depths behind this. You know, you've heard about our ANJ, you've heard about our speaking events, but Elizabeth is going to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing in the States and how we're making changes with the state attorney's office, reaching out letters to the governors and things like that. A little bit more depth behind the scene that we didn't have here before. We're supposed to have another guest here with from the Deaf Penitentiary Information Center to join us, but Elizabeth knows all the information about it. So, furthermore, I would like to let Elizabeth tell y'all a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Herman. So my name is Elizabeth Zitrin. I'm a lawyer. I am the vice chair of the board of directors of Witness to Innocence. I'm also the past president and now senior advisor to the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty. Most of us here work on the death penalty. We focus on the death penalty in the United States, where we have a tremendous amount of work to do. We have state by state campaigning that we have to do because we have to eliminate the death penalty in every state where it exists, in addition to the federal government. But what people sometimes lose sight of is the fact that there is a very vibrant and active international movement against the death penalty. And in recent years, part of what we've done is bring the movement against the death penalty in the United States more into this international movement. One thing that's really different, that was really different for me when I started doing the international work, is that in the rest of the world, most of the world, and certainly in Europe, where there is no longer a death penalty, where they have a humanitarian objection, a moral objection to the death penalty. The death penalty is considered a human rights issue. It's not a criminal justice issue. It's not a political issue. It crosses political lines. And people are opposed to the death penalty and fight against the death penalty because it's inhumane. And it's part of the larger human rights movement in most of the world. In fact, the biggest financial contributor to death penalty abolition worldwide is the European Union, in spite of the fact that you can't be in the European Union if you have the death penalty. The only country in Europe, all of Europe, not just the EU, that has the death penalty is Belarus. And they have a crazy dictator, which I guess doesn't necessarily distinguish them anymore, but it's the only country in Europe that has the death penalty. So we have the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, which is an organization that exists all over the world on every continent. It includes organizational members, not individual members. And we have about 160 member organizations now. And the criteria are really that you be a legitimate organization that is absolutely opposed to the death penalty in all circumstances. And we exist in, I think, on every continent. And we have a number of members in the United States. Witness to Innocence is honored to be a member of the steering committee, which is 20 organizations that work on setting policy for the international organization. In the world now, since 1976, 75 countries that had the death penalty in 1976 have since abolished it. There are now 142 countries, the majority by far, that have abolished the death penalty for all purposes or for most crimes except for treason or war crimes, and a much smaller number, of a third of that still has the death penalty. So now, over the last couple of generations, the United States is definitely in a bad minority worldwide. For years, we were in the top 5 of executing nations. Now we've slipped to 6, I think, number 6. We have always, China is first. We can't even count how many people are executed in China. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq. This year, I think Egypt has displaced, last year, 2019, has displaced the United States. So that's sort of the basic shape of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty. We have a number of things we do. We have World Day Against the Death Penalty, which has been adopted as European Day Against the Death Penalty. October 10th each year. We have a different theme each year. And we do both educational projects. We create a lot of reports and materials. And we also work at the United Nations and other international human rights bodies, and with governments and other nonprofits all over the world. So we have the potential for some real power. And I'll stop in a minute, but I want to say that Witness to Innocence, when Witness to Innocence first became a member of the steering committee, I think one of the first meetings that our executive director, Kirk Bloodsworth, who was the first death row exoneree who was exonerated by DNA evidence, came to a meeting, and it was a big meeting, I think it was in Madrid, and there were 3 men there, all of whom looked still terrified, who were from Taiwan, and they had just been released after a long campaign by death penalty abolitionists, activists in Taiwan. All 3 of them were innocent, and they were the first 3 death row exonerees in Taiwan. And at that meeting, Kirk welcomed them home, and welcomed them to the community that Witness to Innocence has created of death row exonerees. Herman, what else can I tell you?
Well, Elizabeth, I was going to let you go for a while,
It's fine.
But I want to go back to this World Coalition, Coalition. Can you tell people a little bit about what that particular event is about?
About World Day?
The World Coalition.
The World Coalition. Well, the World Coalition, as I mentioned, has now 160 member organizations. And some of them, like Witness to Innocence, are in countries that have the death penalty. But many of them are in countries that no longer have the death penalty. In most of the world, again, this is a moral human rights issue. And so we've been supported from the beginning, and this was really a creation that happened in Europe based on the very strong commitment of Western Europe, particularly, to abolition of the death penalty. And so they provide examples and leadership for us in the United States. There's not a lot of death penalty in the Western Hemisphere. It's mostly us. But there's still death penalty in Asia and in Africa. And certainly for the countries in Asia and in Africa, particularly where there are former French colonies, former Belgian colonies, French-speaking colonies, the French abolition movement has been very devoted and put a tremendous amount of energy into ending the death penalty in places where people were once colonized by France. And we also have lawyers in the UK as well, both in France and in the United Kingdom, where there also is no death penalty, and they go around and represent people and get people off death row in other parts of the world.
And Witness, they have a meeting, what did I think it is, every 4 years? Am I correct?
There is every 3 years, there is a World Congress Against the Death Penalty. And that is a big meeting. It happens in different places. It's the World Coalition is a partner in the presentation of the World Congress. Its principal presenter is Ensemble contre la peine de mort, which means Together Against the Death Penalty, which is the large French abolition organization. And at that meeting, it's several days long, and there are 2,000 to 3,000 abolitionists from all over the world who come and many political leaders as well.
Witness to Innocence was, in fact, he was over there, and I was over in Belgium on the last one, and I had just had a motorcycle accident and walking with like crutches and everything, and everybody was helpful, meeting people from all over the country. But Witness to Innocence got elected to sit on a panel, or you was on a.
We are on. We were elected to the steering committee of the World the organization. The structure of the organization is every member has a vote. There is a general membership meeting once a year. Everybody gets news and information. We have a steering committee, which is 20 member organizations that does a lot of the decision making that there isn't time to go to the whole membership for. So it's sort of like a board of directors. And yes, Witness to Innocence was elected to be on the steering committee. And again, Witness to Innocence is a unique organization in the world. There have started to emerge more exonerees in other places. Of course, there are innocent people on death row, and of course, there are innocent people in prison with other sentences in other countries in the world. But we're unique in the United States, and we're certainly unique in the world as being an organization led and shaped by people like Herman and the other 172 death row exonerees in the United States. So the wisdom and life experience and guidance and just the personal stories and experiences that the members of Witness to Innocence bring to the entire world, they're very much in demand. People want to, and Witness to Innocence members have been to countries all over the world to speak to organizations, from students to churches to legislatures, about the power of innocence. And it's not just about the, and Herman is a frequent speaker and a powerful speaker. It's not just about the terrible experience, but it's about what we learn about the power of innocence to persuade and to change the trajectory of how we think about the death penalty.
And you know, I want to go back to my experience with working with World Coalition, and also we participate in the City of Life with Vicky.
That was great.
You know, and the most fascinating thing is a lot of times when I'm over there in those with those events in the European area and stuff, Witness to Innocence actually sits on top as um, at, of the movement in a lot of places. And one of the things that people must understand is that when we go over and we talk about our stories, it's not just about our stories. You know, we meet other people that has bad situations, and they ask us for advice. So we also sort of like consultants when we over there also, and we have other organizations come to us to ask us for information, to say what it should do. We get a lot of people that want to do reports and things like that. And, you know, the most fascinating thing is when we go over it, and we're from Witness to Innocence, we go over into the foreign countries, you know, we're treated so welcomely, and our opinion is very high. It's like a member of Witness to Innocence is here, and it's like people shows up from all over, and people want to sneak in and peek in and talk to us, and give us a great experience. And to be able to be on these committees and being able to speak in these situations, we have to take pride and do what we do with a passion. And I think that is what putting us out front in a lot of these situations is that uh, every member and every staff and every person participating, we're part of this organization with a passion, and to be able to be in this world fight. You know, I've been offered to take a tour of Africa and speak to all the ambassadors in Africa to try to get to persuade them to abolish the death penalty. And you know, the only reason it didn't happen is because we had a little problems because they wanted me to go with bodyguards. You know, but we have so many uh, partnerships and recommendations around the world to is very is to me, I'm overwhelmed being a part of Witness to Innocence. And then we have great people such as the chairman of the board and the co-chairman of the board and the executive director that give us full support and power to actually get involved in all of these things. You know, if you call us, and whether it's getting involved in a class report, you know, doing a video or taking photos and things like that. Um, you know, they give us great support and flexibility to do what we need to do. But I want to go to something that Elizabeth, that I haven't been actually too much involved in. You know, I do legislative things and stuff like that. But Witness Innocence has played a part in a lot of these states abolishing the death penalty already. For instance, that was, I think it was Virginia or West Virginia recently.
Well, there was Colorado last year. There have been a number of, I don't have the list in front of me, so maybe someone will bring that to us. But Witness to Innocence has been actively involved in abolition efforts in the United States, in every state, virtually every state that is abolished, and states that are still working on abolition. We have Wisconsin that's a target for us this year. Accuracy and Justice was just there virtually with a program for the Bar Association, the State Bar. And you know, in California, I'll give you an example of California. California, where I am, is the largest state in the country. It has the largest death row by far. We have over 20% of all death row prisoners in the country are in the state of California. And at tremendous human cost, of course, and now the human cost is even greater, as it is in every prison system because of COVID. You have people in an overcrowded, already overcrowded beyond its capacity prison system. When there's a disease like COVID that spreads through close contact, people are dying in prison. People with not that much time left even to serve. People in county jails are dying because of COVID. So whatever the crime may have been becomes a death sentence if they're when people are housed incarcerated in such close quarters. But in California, we've had a moratorium on the death penalty for over 10 years. And in 2012, we had an initiative to end the death penalty. It didn't succeed by a few percentage points, but we had a lot of information about what was successful. And what we found out was that in addition to money, just the pure finances of it, which came out to $184 million every year, over and above the cost of life without the possibility of parole. That's what the death penalty cost us, even when we weren't executing anybody. It just, in order to try, retry, house, do appeals, $184 million a year over the cost of sentence of life without the possibility of parole. In addition to the cost, what we found was the most persuasive argument was innocence. And we had a number of witness to innocence members, exonerees, death row exonerees, come to California during that year, as they go all over the country and now all over the world. And what we learned was there is nothing more persuasive to people, to voters, to civilians, to citizens in making up their minds to be opposed to the death penalty than hearing the stories of innocent men and women who were sentenced to death. So very powerful all over the world. And that's why, as Herman says, witness to innocence members are rock stars when they go, to other places in the world. People, it's an unusual thing still. It's not there's not as much organized release and organization of people who may have been exonerated in other countries. So witness to innocence members are, people hang on their every word because their experience is so powerful.
Yeah. And when I think about it, it's sickening when we're not succeeding, and we're not succeeding because of political reasons, and I want to talk a little bit about the letters. I've seen witness to innocent letters be used in a very powerful way when we send them to the governors and things like that around the United States, asking them to abolish the death penalty, asking them to, for instance, we sent letters to Julius Jones case, with Rodney Reed case. Can you talk about a little bit about those letters and the power it had? The letters. Can you talk about a little bit about how, when witness to innocent write letters to the governors, asking them to abolish the death penalty? We've done it in Rodney Reed case. We've done it in Julius Jones cases. And can you talk about some of the litigations we also done into these states in the courts?
Well, I would be hard pressed right now to talk about specific cases of litigation, but there are, again, it's the voices of exonerees, of death row exonerees, are unique. They are men and women. We have 2 women death row exonerees who are members of Witness to Innocence, and although most of our members are men, and their experience is, no one else has an experience like that. They have been on the brink of death. They have been, and this is another aspect of it, Herman, that is of particular interest to me. Every one of them, Herman, all of our members who are death row exonerees have all been tortured by their own government. To be on death row, to be in a situation where you are anticipating your own death. And this is true whether you're innocent or not. But it adds another dimension, of course, if you didn't even do it. It's like being in, a horror movie, or, a Stephen King movie or a Kafka novel, that, you're trapped in this situation and you have feel like you have no way out. But people who have been on death row, and even more people who are innocent and have been on death row, are considered by international standards to be victims of torture, not just a mistake, a simple mistake in the criminal justice system. So I talk about that in part to try to emphasize the extreme nature of the suffering, of the needless suffering that the exonerees the death row exonerees have gone through. It's considered under international human rights standards to be torture. And so these are people who have been tortured by their own government. And of course, the flip side of that, in many cases, and the United States, again, state by state, for most of the exonerees, they're not compensated in any way. And so not only are you tortured by your government, you don't get the price of a cup of coffee, in return for that. So in terms of litigation and the governors, the Witness to Innocence members have been present in many legislative chambers when they've been gone to do the lobbying of the members of the legislatures, and we go everywhere. The Witness to Innocence exonerees will go wherever they are needed to be part of the effort to talk to as many legislators as possible about the danger and wrongness of the death penalty. So, and that involves talking not only to the legislators, but to the governor, because generally what happens is the legislature, a state legislature, has to pass a law and then it has to be signed by the governor. So that's an important part of it. And in terms of litigation, we're not usually, as an organization, a party to a litigation, although we have been a named party in lawsuits about the conditions on death row and about the existence of the death penalty. But Witness to Innocence will sometimes be asked to sign what's called an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, which goes to the court in a litigation to inform the judges about the true nature of life on death row and the consequences of being innocent and being sentenced to death.
When they file those briefs, do it have any impact on the decisions that the judge think about?
Well, it's hard to know, I think, and I'm not, I'm not sort of keyed into the, specifics of any cases now, but judging from the impact that exonerees have on everybody they talk to, judges are going to be subject to the same, for the most part, we hope, human feelings as other people. I think it definitely has an impact. I think it's very important. It's very important for exonerees to talk to legislators. It's very important for them to talk to governors, very important for them to talk to judges. And you can't, nobody gets anything, nobody accepts a new idea the first time they hear it, or the second time, or even the third time. These are enduring discussions. These are discussions that have to be had over and over again about, so that people begin to incorporate the thinking, incorporate into their thinking what your story is, and what what happened to you, and what happened to everybody that was subject to this.
I want to let. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to say, I do think it makes a difference. I think it's very important. I think it's very important for decision makers, for judges, for legislators, for governors, for politicians, certainly for judges, for district attorneys. That's why in the A&J Accuracy and Justice program, we work so much with all levels of the criminal legal system, with defense lawyers, with judges, but mostly with district attorneys, because district attorneys have decision-making power in how to go about presenting a case. And so the importance of giving them your lived experience, the lived experience of all of the exonerees they get to hear from, it is mind-changing, it's life-changing.
And I want to make sure I put this out there that anybody that's watching and or viewing, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask any question for me, Elizabeth, concerning witness to innocence or concerning our experience with this movement. Please feel free to place them in the comments, and one of our staff member will make sure we address it. So please be active and don't be afraid to ask any questions or anything that you would like to bring up. Elizabeth, I want to go back some. I want to go back to your history with Witness Innocence, really asking, how long have you been with Witness Innocence, and how have being a part of Witness Innocence affected any changes in your thinking on your life?
Well, I've been involved with Witness to Innocence since almost the beginning. Witness to Innocence, if people don't know, was started how many years ago now? 17, 18, close to 20 years ago, 18 years ago. I'm confusing the dates of Witness to Innocence and the dates of the World Coalition. But Witness to Innocence was started by Sister Helen Prejean, who is the author of the book Dead Man Walking, which became a very famous movie. Susan Sarandon won an Oscar for playing the role of Sister Helen. And Sister Helen and I'm corrected that it's 17 years. So I was right about 2003. Thank you. To this, we have Cracker Jack staff who are on top of everything. Not allowed to make a mistake, which is good. Sister Helen, this was part of her ministry against the death penalty, and she started Witness to Innocence with the 100th death row exoneree, Ray Crone, who is still a very active and powerful part of the Witness to Innocence community. And so it was it was around that time that I first heard from, I was a criminal defense lawyer, I was doing death penalty abolition work here in California. And I heard from a couple of people who were doing the work, the first executive director, who was sort of looking for some support. So I was able to establish that relationship with them, and have sort of never left. So I've been involved in one way or another with Witness to Innocence and each of its directors and many of our members, and who we are of, by, and for innocent, exonerated death row former prisoners. And it has changed the focus. I would say to some extent, it's changed the focus of my advocacy for abolition of the death penalty, because of two things. One is the power of the stories of innocence. When I first started talking to death row exonerees and hearing what had happened to each and every one of them, the similarities, the differences, the profound destruction of the self that torture of a human being exacts was tremendously moving and made me want to do more. And it also gave me a clearer vision of how these voices are the most powerful voices to use in the broader fight against the death penalty, and both nationally and worldwide. So bringing Witness to Innocence into the international death penalty abolition community was something that became very important to me, and that I wanted to help facilitate, both to help the exonerees being more empowered by sharing their stories, and also to strengthen the international movement with these very powerful stories and the tool of innocence.
I was just asked the question in the comments by a friend of mine's, Dale Flo, Cardell. He wanted to, I think he's trying to make me cry, actually. So he asked the question, how does it,
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
He said, how does it feel to be on death row knowing you're innocent? You know, my experience on death row was a short experience, and I thank God for that. My case became one of the first cases in history on direct appeal that I was, the Florida Supreme Court unanimously ruled that I shouldn't have been convicted. My experience on death row, for those that don't know how death row is, it's a 24-hour lockdown. You're able to go to recreation twice a week, shower 3 times a week, and that's brief moments out of your cell. Most of the times you're in your cell. But it was very traumatizing for me, because here it is, I was convicted by our justice system to die by injection. I mean, I would never forget that day when the judge came down and he said, "We, the people of the state of Florida, hereby now sentence you to die by lethal injection." That will never go out of my head. That is worse than actually being on death row, hearing the judge say that for a crime I did not commit. And you sit there, and it's like you don't know whether how the appeal court's going to react to your case. You know, you have people that's been sitting on waiting on appeals and fighting for their life for 18, 25, 35 years before they even get any kind of relief. And thank God for all these new organizations, especially the Innocence Project, and all these people that's advocating for the innocent, where they're being able to change the judge's view, where they actually go in and look at the case seriously. Because back in the days of the good old boy system, and most judges feel like if the lower court found you guilty, the jury found you guilty, hey, you're guilty. And they threw your appeal to the side, unless you had a reason or a good attorney beside you to actually grab their attention to an issue that is really legally, what would they call it, not harmless error. You know, they used to throw that excuse harmless error around. So when I was on death row, I was hoping to go home, but I really didn't believe that I would go home. And being there during the time of people that I'm playing basketball with or talking with are slowly being snatched out their cell and brought to the death watch and being executed. You know, it's I mean, it's traumatizing. You're talking to somebody one moment, and the next minute the government will sign a warrant and move it over to the death watch over the top of the death chamber, and next thing you know, the officer comes through after the execution and says he's gone. And it's a hurting feeling. So being on death row and you're innocent, or being in prison, period, and you're innocent, is a feeling that I wish on no one. But unfortunately, it's so many that is going through the same thing that I went through, that's still in there. And, you know, we're trying to get people aboard to help fight for them, to recognize these cases and get involved in things like that. And that's one of the great things for the existence of Witness the Innocent Project, Represent Justice, you know, all these ACLU, all these great organizations to actually get in there and fight for those lives that are innocent. So hopefully that answers your question. And no, I did not cry, even though I'm emotionally thinking about crying. The thing about it, I want people to understand, and I thank God that Witness the Innocent did put something in place to deal with the trauma of speaking, because what people don't understand is that every time we speak, we have to relive that moment that we was in, whether it was 10 years ago, 30 years ago, wherever. Those emotions and those feelings are buried inside, and every time we speak, it actually affects us emotionally. And sometimes I can be placed in a deep depression, bad anxiety, bad PSTA. You know, it's awful, and that is why we fight, and we fight with a passion. And I'm glad to have friends such as Elizabeth that get involved. You know, she wasn't actually a death row exoneree. She was a former attorney, and she could be doing a lot of things with her life. You know, she could be traveling and enjoying it, but yet she's faithfully on the board. You know, she's very active, and she's not one of the person that say, "Hey, what can I do to help this?" No, she intervened and get in and try to do what she can do to help this. And she's so open-minded and so challenging. And that's what, you know, some people like. Elizabeth challenged everything, but it's good that she challenged. Elizabeth, is good that you're challenging things, because it gives a person the opportunity to look at things on a different view. You know, everybody's not, you know, we look at things on the legal side, then we have to look at things on the emotional side and the trauma side. And you know, it's so much. And I want to thank you, Elizabeth, for your participation in Witness Innocent and on this show today. But I have to boggle your mind just a little bit, just a little bit. So before, when you was an attorney, what type of cases you used to deal with? I mean, what was you civil? Was you criminal?
No, I did criminal defense. I worked my first few years, and I didn't do it for all the long. Honestly, I found it very, very difficult, emotionally difficult. I really loved the work, and I found it emotionally difficult because you lose a lot. And for me, you know, if I lost emotion, whatever it was, I felt like I felt responsible. I felt like I hadn't worked hard enough. I felt like I hadn't done enough. So it was emotionally pretty difficult for me. And and I did work on, early on, I worked on one death case at the trial level. And it didn't get to trial, but I worked on one death case in the pretrial period. So I was going to visit the client and work on motions preparing the case. And that was as close as I came to trial level capital case. When I came back, I stopped practicing when I had a family, a small child at home. And when I came back and honestly, it was just very, very difficult. It's a very hard work, and it's a very important work. It's the front line of defense of the Constitution. And but for me, it was emotionally difficult to consider losing. I had my second jury trial, I had a factually innocent client. It was robbery, multiple counts of robbery. And, so multiple years, facing multiple years in prison. And I was terrified. I knew this guy was innocent. I mean, he was dead bang innocent, no technicalities, no, anything. He was just flat out innocent. And the pressure, it's not like the pressure you have of being innocent in prison, but having an innocent client and being afraid that it worked out fine. The case was dismissed and it all worked out okay. But it was stressful for me. So emotionally, intellectually, I loved it. And, I went to law school because someone said they pay you to argue. Actually, that was my father. So that was, I was good at arguing. But I found it stressful and difficult. When I came back, I worked on, while I was doing advocacy, I did work on a number of post-conviction cases, teams that were working on post-conviction cases, one as many as over 30 years post-conviction. And I enjoyed that very, very much. I mean, none of the cases that I worked on did I feel like the person was innocent. So I didn't have that kind of pressure. But you do get to see up close all of the levels of injustice in the system, including, one case that I worked on for a long time where this guy did not have the intellectual capacity to do anything. And they knew it from the time he was a child. They had testing, and it had long psychological testing, talking about how damaged he was and then toward his last psychological test was inside the California prison system, where it just said that he was suitable to be executed. So taking someone who was known to the system to have intellectual disability, severe intellectual disability, and just ignoring it, not treating it, letting him go in and out of the system until finally they said, yeah, sure, we can execute this guy, was a really clear lesson in one of the many kinds of injustice that happens within the system.
I want to touch on something you said, and most people don't understand this, but from an attorney perspective, and I heard a lot of attorneys say this, what defendants don't understand is that, and a lot of people, the family members don't understand, when attorneys actually lose cases, especially a death penalty case or a life imprisonment case, a lot of them don't just sit with them, not because they actually lost, but more because they was trying to save this person's life, and it becomes a personal thing with them when they're fighting in death penalty cases, and how it's just crazy how they're attached to these cases, and most people don't understand that attorneys take these very personal. As I was saying, you were saying that it was bothering you, and a lot of times attorneys don't go home and just go to sleep after losing one of these cases. No. So can you, just I just want to speak on this point just for a second, so people understand that, you was really affected by that case, correct?
Absolutely, every case. I mean, if you take your job seriously, which most do, there, of course, there are some, hacks somewhere, but as a criminal defense lawyer, whether it's capital cases or other cases, you take your job very seriously. And, I live in a very special place. I live in San Francisco. And, I hear a lot about, in the sort of popular press about, oh, someone had a public defender. I must say, public defenders are the hardest working, most dedicated lawyers anywhere. They didn't go for making the big bucks somewhere. They are doing the most important and hardest work. They are overworked, but for the most part, they are the most skilled and most competent criminal defense lawyers, certainly in a desirable environment like the San Francisco Bay Area. Other places, things might be different, but it's hard to get a job being a public defender in a place like this. But people take it very seriously. They take it to heart. And it's hard to draw the line and say it's easier for some people than others and say this is just a job. It's never just a job. Of course, you have to do your best and accept the outcomes. But there is always someone's life or liberty at risk. And it's so much harder than doing civil litigation, where it's only money, and maybe a lot of money, but it's only money. If you practice in criminal courts, you do criminal defense, someone's life or liberty is at stake. And that's why the conduct of prosecutors, that's why Witness to Innocence, specifically through the Accuracy and Justice Project, works so closely and so intensely with prosecutors, because every step that they take, every move that they make can change the outcome for a person. It has to be absolutely fair. It's why it makes a difference if police record interrogations. It's why it makes a difference if police do fair lineups and photo lineups. Because if you have a prosecutor or a police officer, or a judge for that matter, but a prosecutor or police officer put their thumb on the scale, I think it's Herman Lindsey, and I'm not going to be quite fair. I'm going to, nudge someone in the ribs or give a sign or give a signal that I think it's Herman and I want them to identify Herman. That is not what the justice system is for. The justice system is for justice. It's not to convict someone just to convict someone. And that's why in the A&J program and in this brief that was just filed, one by the governor and one by 6 DAs, three of them DAs that A&J has a relationship with. These are principles that come from the top of a district attorney's office. They are here to see justice done, not to see a particular person or a particular kind of person prosecuted and sentenced and sent to jail. So the role of DAs, elected DAs, in seeing that real justice is done, can't be overemphasized. That's why we're doing A&J, right?
Well, we getting close to time to cutting the show. I hope the staff don't mind me, or you don't mind me doing this, but I want to take the moment to thank my wife. I've been going through a lot lately, and I've been letting the trauma and the anxiety, depression get the best of me, frustrated, angry. But she's really been supportive and really dealing with a lot, dealing with me. So I just wanted to tell my wife, Nikki Lindsey, that I apologize for all the trouble I have been putting you through for the last couple of months, and that I love you very much. And now we'll switch to the slide. Do we have the slide? Put it up, Ashley, Chloe, Jimmy. Thank you. So this is just some links that we try to make people aware of. Actually, I'm going to talk about the connect with Herman Lindsey, which is hlindsey@witnessinnocence.org. That is a personal email with witnessinnocence.org for me. If you haven't, if you ever feel like you need to reach out to me or have some suggestions for the show, or you know, if you have any questions or have anything that you want Herman to be involved in, feel free to email us at hlindsey@witnessinnocence.org. Now, Elizabeth, can you see everything on the screen?
I can see the slide. Yeah, I can see everything on the screen. World Coalition. Yes.
So I'm going
Great.
to ask you to talk about those particular links.
Well, the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty is worldcoalition.org. And the global campaigns is just, we have a lot of material there, including a lot of just educational material. I'm not sure. Some of it, you might have to look around the site a little. Every World Day Against the Death Penalty, we put up a lot of material. You can look around the World Coalition site. This year it was about access to counsel. And, you know, again, we feel like in the United States, people have better access to counsel than they do in other parts of the world. And that's true, but it is an issue everywhere in the world that everyone needs access to competent counsel and that knows what they're doing. Global campaigns, you can see there some of the work that's being done to encourage moves toward abolition, including in places like the United Nations, where there are various worldwide instruments that some countries can sign on to become part of. The worldwide database is exactly that. There is so much information. You can look by country. If you're interested in a particular country or a region of the world, you can find out what the status of the death penalty is there, how many people have been executed, what their method of execution was. It's very, very detailed, but you can get a clear view of to what extent and in what ways the death penalty is still active. And in some places in Africa, in Iran, Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, there's so much lack of transparency. There's so much secrecy. There are places I've seen death chambers where, you know, we weren't allowed to look through one because the night before someone was brought in, they lay down on the ground, they were shot in the back of the head with a bullet, and they hadn't cleaned up the blood yet. So lethal injection is no better than a bullet to the back of the head, just to be clear. It just makes it look neat. But so there's a lot of information about how this barbaric practice is carried out and what work is being done in other parts of the world. And, you know, I hope you find it interesting. And just again, to say, follow the World Coalition, follow Witness to Innocence on social media. And I think part of it, I know that Witness to Innocence, which is very, very active in the United States, is also active in the rest of the world, because innocence is more persuasive than anything. Innocence is different, death is different, and the men and women who have suffered this torture of being sentenced to death for something they're innocent of have an enormously powerful message.
I just want to add that if you wish to contact Accuracy and Justice, or for our event, you can go to witnessinnocence.org and you can get in contact with us. You can also go to witnessinnocence.org and look at some of the programs that we're offering. The events, you can see the bios of most of the death row exonerees on that and some of the stories. You find links to other places to find information. And then we would love for you to join us to our Facebook and our Instagram, to our Twitter. The more we spread the education, it is better. And invite people to, even if they can't attend our show, to share our show. And those that cannot, don't have a Facebook or cannot sit on Facebook, we also record these shows and put them on YouTube. Witness Innocence on YouTube. So apparently we don't have enough space to put that on right now. But I would like to thank everybody for tuning in today. And Elizabeth, is there anything you'd like to say before we leave?
No, just info@witnessinnocence.org also will get you to someone. If you email to info@witnesstinnocence.org. I want to thank everyone for being here and listening. And Herman, thank you. So Herman is the hardest working man in the business here. He's everywhere and does everything. And this is a great hour that you do on every week. So thanks for this too. Can't wait to see you in person again.
Now I feel like Steve Harvey, the hardest working man around.
There you go.
But I want to thank everybody for joining us today and our great staff. Our executive director for Innocence, Kurt Bloodworth, and chairman of the board, Kwame, for allowing us to do this show every week. And I want to thank my staff for the great work they do behind the scenes to put this together every week. So Chloe, Ashley, Jenny, Trisha, Kara, I appreciate y'all every day, all the time. I appreciate the Death Row Exonerees for their support, and our donors. We have some nice donors, especially the European. We're very thankful for them. They help us keep operating, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get. We're talking about offering a spot on the show for sponsors. So if anyone out there that knows that someone who would like to be a sponsor of this show, please contact Witness the Innocent. We're also getting ready to do a fundraising show. That's going to be like crazy for me because I got to talk about everybody's story. But if y'all have any ideas of what you would like to hear on this show, any education information that can be helpful to those that's out there, please contact Witness Innocent on our website. You can see our links to contact us. And I want to thank everybody for joining us again for this really conversation of cruel justice empowered by Witness Innocent. And I'd like to say so long to everyone. Bye-bye.